Good evening. Passport, check. Entire family, check. Incendiary, stroppy tweet, check, check, check. The Trump state visit is officially underway, officially all going to plan. There were tours of Clarence House and Buckingham Palace, tributes paid at Westminster Abbey. Tonight was the state banquet, where the Queen spoke movingly of our two countries' shared history.
Britain and the United States worked with other allies to build an assembly of international institutions to ensure that the horrors of conflict would never be repeated. While the world has changed, we are forever mindful of the original purpose of these structures, nations working together to safeguard a hard-won peace. Of course, it is not only our security which unites us, but our strong cultural links and shared heritage.
Warm words. This morning was all a little grumpier. Donald Trump was moved to call the Mayor of London a short, stone-cold loser as he sat on the Essex tarmac. And he threw in a couple of insults for the New York Mayor Bill de Blasio too. We'll speak live to him in a moment. Tonight we ask what we learn about our own politicians from their response to President Trump. Should they play the man or the ball, that is, the president himself or his office of state? When Conservative contenders are queuing up for his endorsement, is it demeaning to beg America's president for approval and trade deals, or pure stupidity to treat him like the enemy? It started, as these things often do, with the full glamour of Stansted Airport. And before he'd even left the plane, a row was brewing, as they often do, over the tone of his tweets. He'd called London's mayor a stone-cold loser, a response to Sadiq Khan's own earlier message of welcome. And while he was at it, he fired off a broadside at the New York mayor, Bill de Blasio. De Blasio, it seems, was delighted. As the president flew in, a welcome message imprinted on the lawn. So far then, so normal. He was swept from the dizzy heights of Stansted to central London by helicopter. A further ride took him to Buckingham Palace, a reminder that this populist president cannot actually face the people of Britain, arguably America's closest ally. With the Queen, he got the full state visit treatment, and they talked tartan. In the Abbey, he was reminded of our shared past, united against a common enemy in war. But the real politics of this trip begins tomorrow. Final preparations being put in place for the coming days, official and unofficial. He will not have the chance to address Parliament, that privilege denied him by the Speaker John Bercow. And there'll be no one-on-one with Theresa May. Instead, a host of others will be present when they speak. It's unclear who took that decision, but it will probably hold little regret for either. It was a relationship that never appeared an easy one. It's the coming days that will show us most clearly where our politicians and leadership contenders position themselves in response to this most extraordinary of democratically elected leaders. Privately, many admit to respecting him little. Publicly, they will say what they can to get him on side.
I'd be thanking him for all that the United States does to help Britain.
Sajid Javid, thanks very much.
Except the leader of the opposition, who continued the war of words on Twitter and confirmed he'd be speaking at tomorrow's protests. As countless previous visits have shown, our relationship with America is vital. Trade deals and security, intelligence sharing and global alliances. But how much should we believe what the president actually promises? His words, as we know, are light, his ambitions often unachieved. Is it demeaning to believe him when he promises Britain the world, as long as we follow his plan of attack? Or would it be even crazier to ignore him? We'll be speaking to the New York Mayor, Bill de Blasio, in just a moment. First, though, we're joined in the studio by the Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood, a former key aide to Margaret Thatcher, Lord Faulkner, former Lord Chancellor under Tony Blair, and from Washington, D.C., by Liz Harrington, national spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee. Let me start with you, Liz Harrington. Do you really believe, then, that a trade deal is on the cards, a quick trade deal between the US and the UK, if, as President Trump says, it cuts its ties with Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the goal, has always been to have a strong trade partnership once the UK does follow through on its Brexit vote, which the British people voted for.
York Mayor Bill de Blasio in just a moment. First, though, we're joined in the studio by the Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood, a former key aide to Margaret Thatcher, Lord Faulkner, former Lord Chancellor under Tony Blair, and from Washington, D.C., by Liz Harrington, national spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee. Let me start with you, Liz Harrington. Do you really believe, then, that a trade deal is on the cards, a quick trade deal between the US and the UK, if, as President Trump says, it cuts its ties with Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the goal, has always been to have a strong trade partnership once the UK does follow through on its Brexit vote, which the British people voted for back into 2016. And so, of course, that's the goal, but I think we're going to have to wait until the successor of Theresa May gets in power.
Do you accept, Lord Faulkner, that it is crazy to ignore somebody so powerful who can deliver so much?
It's crazy to ignore the United States of America. They are one of our closest allies. But you have to stand up to the political contempt with which President Trump treats our politicians. He's been rude about our Prime Minister. He's been rude about the Mayor of London. He's been rude about the way that we've done Brexit. And we're just supposed to treat this person who breaks all the diplomatic norms as if he should be treated in the way that somebody would be treated under normal circumstances. No, that is not the way to treat a friend. A friend should be told he can't behave like that.
Does rudeness matter?
Well, it's not great, but it's a characteristic of this president. I think we're right to honour the office of the President of the United States of America. There is much we have in common. The alliance is very important. The shared interest in defence and intelligence is crucial to both countries. And we have a very strong trading relationship already, despite EU tariffs being imposed on the United States under World Trade Organization rules. But I think it would be possible to improve on that with a World Trade deal, with a joint deal under World Trade rules that went further, and that would be in our mutual interest.
I'm going to ask you to throw that back to you, John Redwood. First of all, endangering ill will, and there's something dangerous about the game he's playing now. And indeed, about the game that your colleagues, many Conservative PM hopefuls, are playing in trying to woo him.
Well, we know that the Mayor of New York would like to be the Democrat candidate and is trying to score points off the president because he wishes to oppose him in the forthcoming presidential election. But he was wrong to ignore your very fair point that the bad exchanges began with our mayor in London being very disobliging about the president and about his visit. And the president responded. And we all know that Donald Trump is a master of the tweet, and he does undiplomatic tweets, and that is part of his style.
This is less about Donald Trump.
But we are interested in the visit of the most powerful man in the Western world, the leader of the Western world. And of course, there will be times when the United Kingdom has tough messages to give to our leading ally and friend.
But
there
now
will be many times when there are lots of good messages, and now is a time for a good message because we are commemorating a great collaboration.
Look at the position of your Conservative colleagues. Jeremy Hunt can't decide whether he's coming or going, whether to sort of embrace him or leave him. Sajid Javid was saying he ignores all the Muslim ban. You know, he said this yesterday, and he just wants to thank him. You've got people who are positively sycophantic in his presence. He's not going to deliver a trade deal to people he thinks are sycophants.
Well, he will deliver a trade deal that makes sense for the United States of America, and any British Prime Minister has to stand up for British interests in a way which we lamentably didn't in our negotiations with the European Union.
No. I mean, the President is playing, as Bill de Blasio said, a wholly inappropriate and dangerous game. Any sensible British politician, whether a Conservative or a Labour, will say, we will choose the next Prime Minister. We will not...
Isn't it the opposite of patriotic? If all this was to gain sort of British patriotism back, isn't it completely the opposite?
Well, each individual candidate for the leadership will make up their own mind about their attitudes towards the United States of America. I guess one candidate was well known to the President likes him, and then the other candidates got jealous. But that won't be determining...
That's pathetic, isn't it? That's
that won't be determining
party.
how I vote for them. I will want to know...
Prime Minister?
No, of course I don't want a craven Prime Minister, and I will be, with other colleagues, choosing in due course from this galaxy of talent which has suddenly come forward.
Will you ensure that you don't vote for the most craven?
But I will not be judging them on what they've said about President Trump primarily. I will be judging them on how do they get us out of the European Union as quickly as possible without the withdrawal agreement, which has been decisively rejected by the British voters, and then go on to be a good independent democracy, allying with the United States of America and many other countries where it is in our mutual interest. But our Prime Minister has to stand up for our interests.
Let me bring in Liz Harrington. I wonder whether you're completely bemused by the conversation that you're hearing this side, Liz Harrington. You've got a president who can't even drive up the Mall to Buckingham Palace without protests, has to take helicopters everywhere because he's not liked at all here. And we're trying to work out whether he's even serious in the words he uses to talk about trade.
What I would say is rude and inappropriate and divisive is when the President of the United States is on his way to join with our great ally, United Kingdom, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of defeating fascism and defeating Nazism and saving the world order for freedom and democracy, to be accused and smeared by the mayor of London of being a fascist with no evidence. So that is what is rude and divisive. And what you haven't shown in your coverage tonight is the president's really strong message and solidarity with the Queen of England, with expressing our shared values of sovereignty and freedom and liberty. And there is such a warm, strong relationship that is going to be even stronger going forward.
Why then did he begin this whole trip in the Oval Office by talking about the right candidates to be Prime Minister of a country that he does not belong to?
He didn't endorse anyone. He said, I like Boris Johnson, but if he gets it, that would be great. But you know who did interject into your politics was none other than Barack Obama, who threatened you and said you would be at the back
He's just
of
done
the
exactly
queue
the same thing. He's literally done the same thing.
No, he has not.
Completely different.
Britain has already voted democratically, I would add, to leave the European Union. He is saying he supports Great Britain, the people of Great Britain.
Liz, I'm just going to bring in Lord Faulkner.
He's expressed a view about Boris Johnson. He said Farage should be involved in the negotiations, and when he landed on the tarmac, the first thing he spoke to the British Foreign Secretary about was Sadiq Khan. Why is he involving himself to such an extent in the politics of another country?
Why is the mayor smearing the President of the United States as
he's the President of the United States of America. Why is he saying these things about our politics? Why is he not, like almost every other President of the United States of America, stepped back from UK politics? And you should understand that Barack Obama said if we left the European Union, we'd be at the back of the queue for a deal. That's a completely different thing.
But it was a deliberate and malicious intervention.
Favouring a particular
we want a good deal
politician.
Once you follow through on Brexit, which is what your people
and it helped
wanted.
the Leave campaign, I'm pleased to say.
So if you don't like Obama, you think it's pretty outrageous, and if you don't like Trump, you think that's pretty outrageous.
That was a referendum campaign when the British public were going to make a very important decision.
So you're criticising President Obama for that. Why are you not criticising
Could I
finish the point? Why are you not criticising President Trump for making suggestions, first of all, about how Mrs. May should conduct the negotiations? He was critical of her. And secondly, suggesting Farage.
I want to move this on to the position that the opposition have taken. Jeremy Corbyn, we know, will be speaking. He didn't attend the banquet tonight. He'll be speaking in protest at the rally tomorrow. Is that the role for the Leader of the Opposition?
Well, normally not, most certainly not. But once the President of the United States engages to such an extent in UK politics, then it's very difficult both for Sir Vince Cable and the Leader of the Opposition.
He's not responding to Trump's Brexit plan, I don't think,
He's
tomorrow,
certainly
is it?
not responding
Right.
to his Brexit plan.
So should he be protesting? Should he be on the stump protesting?
I think that the way that President Trump has conducted himself towards British politics, which includes breaking with the norm that you don't get involved in UK politics, made it very difficult both for Sir Vince Cable and for Jeremy Corbyn to go to the dinner, because it's very difficult to disassociate the President of the United States from President Trump.
He could be in power in 6 months' time, and then what happens?
And he's made it clear that he will engage with President Trump, and he's made it clear that he will speak to President Trump, and he has made it clear he will raise his issues direct with him, but not the honour of a state visit.
But the Leader of the Opposition should be at a banquet like that, and if he has a disagreement with the President, the courteous thing to do is to go to the banquet and tell the President privately but firmly why he disagrees with him. I think it's a cop-out what Jeremy
No, I don't
is
think that's
doing,
right.
and I think he's letting the country down by what he's
All
doing.
along.
We've run out of time.
Sorry.
Thank you all very much. That was very polite.